This is the Debunking Economics Podcast with Steve Keen and Phil Dobbie.
The Archives.
Episode 194. Next, a repair-based economy.
Hello, I'm Phil Dobbie. Steve Keen is hiding from the virus in Thailand. I'm stuck in a studio at the end of the garden in Surrey. But the Debunking Economics podcast continues. We've got a few in the can, so to speak. One recorded last week, just before Steve left Europe, looking at the repair-based economy. Is our buy, throwaway culture sustainable? Is the idea of a circular economy realistic? I thought that might be worth a little discussion as we all get used to very different ways of living these days. That's today on the Debunking Economics podcast. So, Steve, one of the questions we might be left with after this virus that we are in the midst of will be, have we become too reliant on supply chains? I think we talked about that last week when we were talking. Another might be, are we just too reliant on stuff generally? And if we are to look after the planet, do we lose our appetite for goods that we keep for a short while and then throw away? And in which case, why not keep them and fix them, which of course used to be, in more austere times, the way stuff was done. I remember my mum darning socks rather than buying new pair. You wouldn't even entertain the idea of doing that these days. So is it time for us to go back to that idea of a repair-based economy? And if so, how would we even start to implement such a thing?
That's the trouble. I mean, we've lost the skills. And you're quite right. The darning socks one is one that everybody of a certain age can remember their parents doing. I'm a certain age plus 10. And my father repairing stuff in his own little shop, workshop in the back of the house, back in the garage. We had the capability and the skills back then. Yeah,
but it doesn't have to be individuals doing it either. I mean, it's you look at mobile phones. If you've not got the latest one, you throw it away. And in fact, the EU, what got me onto the idea that maybe this is something we should talk about is the EU is wanting to introduce measures that would mean it would be easier to repair and reuse, specifically things like phones and laptops and tablets, because less than 40% of electronic waste in the EU is recycled.
Yeah, so we've got a whole production system based upon producing stuff and flogging it, and not thinking about the consequences of doing it. One of the best guys on the need to have a totally different approach to the economy is an Australian guy called Ted Trainer. And I recommend people search his name and take a look at his arguments. He has fairly convincingly argued that we could have had a community in which we had, like, for example, every housing block would have a fridge, which would be large enough capacity for the entire housing block, which would last 200 years in terms of its design, where the roads would not be roads. There would be what we currently use as roads would in fact be areas for crops. And we would cycle and have mini-sized vehicles, etc., etc. So the type of world we've got is a bit like the world of Who Killed Roger Rabbit, for those who have seen that movie. For those who haven't, it's a wonderful animated feature starring Bob Hoskins, I think, English actor. Yeah. As a human character, I mean, just a whole bunch of cartoons. And the theme of the story, which sort of gets lost to a lot of people, is that the evil oil-producing companies are shutting down the tram service. I think it was Los Angeles or San Francisco. Los Angeles, I think. Yeah. Shutting down the tram service to make us all use cars. Now, that actually happened. So what we've done is have a world in which we have maximum output to have maximum sales, maximize profits, and not think about the end consequences of that. And that was fine at a time which William Bormer once described as the cowboy economy, when there's an enormous amount of unused land in which you can expand. Not today. We're in spaceship Earth, as Bormer put it, and we've got to treat it that way.
And how much of that is because the value of so many goods is in the actual commodity that is at the base of it. So whether it's oil or whatever the resources are, the actual manufacturing component is such a small part now of the total price. So so the idea you might mend something or fix it means you're not getting all that revenue from the core. Yeah. So it's whether it's the materials on an iPhone, because it'd be very easy, wouldn't it? In fact, I'm surprised no one's done it, for somebody to say, well, let's have a mobile phone where if a new processor comes out, okay, I don't know how you fix it. You take out the old one and stick the new one in.
There is actually one, I can't remember the design, but there is one phone that has been designed along those lines.
Right.
Everything is removable and replaceable. But one of the...
That's a big improvement, isn't it?
It's also a big increase in size. It's the whole idea of these tiny but very powerful and sexy-looking phones is dependent upon the entire thing being a single unit. You actually weld the CPU onto the circuit board.
Right.
Okay? Everything is...
okay, so we change it so that... I mean, the problem is it's cheaper for the company to remake it in its entirety rather than repair and fix and upgrade.
Yeah.
So something in that cost structure has got to change this thinking then, hasn't it? So that it becomes worthwhile for a phone company to say, give us your old phone back and we'll upgrade it by changing the components.
Yeah. But we have to do that. But like the whole idea of a circular economy says we continue using stuff in a circle. And I've got some good friends who work in that area. Kate Raworth, of course, with the idea of the donut economy. Her vision of the economy is a donut. So you don't want to be in the center or outside the donut. You want to be inside, and that means from the inside out, you're getting sufficient resources for everybody. From the outside in, you're within planetary boundaries. She's got a huge part of the planet's inside the donut. They haven't got to the stage where they can eat the contents. And the huge part of the planet's outside the donut, we're actually stressing the planet in about 7 fundamental ways.
It's seeing the economy behaving the same way.
Ken Webster, who's one of my patrons, hi Ken, is a strong component of the circular economy. I once made a negative remark about that because my instant thought about the idea of a circular economy is a circle is something that doesn't move. Okay? A circle just stays there. I would rather, and I've said this to Kate as well, change to saying we should talk about the wheel economy. Because a wheel, first of all, is humanity's first great invention. Okay? Mm-hmm. If you think about what has dramatically transformed, reduced the amount of energy necessary to achieve useful work, far and away the most important invention we ever made was the wheel. Secondly, a wheel doesn't turn unless somebody pushes it.
Right. Okay. So your argument there, just so I'm getting this right, so circular, I mean, the thinking behind a circular economy is that it's self-contained, basically. You're not pulling anything out, and you're not pulling anything in. It's just the way the environment operates. That nature is
no, it's not the way the environment operates because the environment needs energy coming in from the outside.
Right.
So that's why I said a wheel economy is a better vision because wheels don't turn unless you push them. Wheels have got a rim, so you can be inside the rim or outside the tyre. They do the same sort of thing as a donut. That's the vision I want people to have of the economy. It's a wheel. It has to be pushed. Okay, and again, pushing it involves energy and involves waste, and therefore you have limits to what you can do overall. So the idea of a circular economy implies we can continue reusing everything. That defies what's called the second law of thermodynamics. There has to be waste. If you're going to do useful work, part of your energy has to be wasted unless you're dumping it into a point in the universe which is at 0 Kelvin, absolute zero, and the other next law is there is no such waste.
But we want to minimise that waste, obviously.
We want to minimise the waste. You can't get rid of it, but you do want to minimise it. And so the whole idea of emphasising reuse rather and rebuild and repairing rather than throw away and buy a new one. That is a vital thing. But we've left it probably, again, with 30 or 40 years too late to really do that properly. So if we'd actually done that properly with mobile phones, it might be about maybe twice the weight. Okay. But
maybe we could live with that.
We could live with it. And you would be just continually changing components as time went on, depending which component matters most to you.
Well, I'm a parent who's at the stage where I'm thinking maybe mobile phones who are, with 2 kids who are in teenage years or approaching teenage years, is beginning to think maybe mobile phones weren't a great invention for mankind anyway. And if someone hadn't invented it, we might actually have progressed better as a species. But I mean, even if we did disassemble and rebuild, we're still going to have waste, aren't we? Of course, because we make progress on making things smaller, and that's the problem. There's, that's the price you pay for progress. The stuff that you are always going to chuck away because you've done something better. I'm not quite sure how you get over that. Unless you say, well,
and you've also got fundamental waste, both energetic and physical.
Yeah,
that you can't reuse. And it's not a good idea to reuse cyanide. But that's part of the production process of using gold in various manufacturing processes. So there are some things which which you can't recycle. So again, I like the circular economy concept compared to the build it and throw it away world we live in. Definitely an improvement, but the actual vision has to be one where we acknowledge we've got to have energy as an input from the outside, and that we necessarily create waste. And
so then doesn't it become then a question of the cost of those inputs, whether it's energy or whether it's other raw materials that we're using? So a guy called Walter Stahel, I might have pronounced it wrong, he founded the Product Life Institute in Geneva. Never heard of it until today.
Sounds good.
He argues that last century resource prices were constantly decreasing. This century they are going to increase, and so that's going to force a rethink, which sounds good, except for the fact I'm not seeing prices increasing this century. Look at oil, for example.
Yeah, I mean, we are pushing we've pushed right through the limits to growth. Okay, so I think that's what this 2020 is teaching everybody, that this is not a year like any other. Okay, we started with the fires in Australia were the first big signal, but there were fires in California before that. From what I'm seeing from people I know who were weather specialists in America, California is getting ready for very big fires, much bigger than the previous ones. Yep. That's the beginning of the environmental breakdown caused by shifting weather patterns so much that what used to be forest is now becoming desert, and there'll be horrific wildfires. Australia's had the first taste. California looks like it'll be number 2. Spain isn't too far away. Then we had floods in various parts of the world. Again, Australia's really lucking out.
And the UK and Europe. I mean,
UK as well, that's right.
Wettest February
Number
ever.
3 is the coronavirus. Now, if this isn't enough to wake up to people, we've gone beyond the planetary balance. I don't know what is. Something else will come along, which will be worse.
But there's so much going on, it's hard to deconstruct it all, isn't it?
So the concept of the circular economy was going in the right direction. And the trouble is you have economists disparaging that and always thinking there'll be a technological fix for everything. And that's that.
But how do you find the technological fix for waste? I mean, that's the.
They don't even understand physical objects. A lot of them, they've got blackboard economics. Where you can draw equations and lines on the blackboard. They use words that look like they're related to the real world and have no correlation whatsoever. But the circular economy vision is saying that's how we should be. That is definitely the way we should have been thinking. And the fact that we're doing that in some places like Ken Webster's group, which I think of the Ellen MacDonald Foundation, Kate Swarth on the donut economy, the guy you've just had here a moment ago, those are good beginning to take back in the direction we should have gone. But we've still gone far too far down the world, which sees us being in a cowboy economy where you can throw it away because there's plenty of...
Well, so how do you change that? I mean, because the danger is that everyone, and I think most people would say, well, this seems like a good idea, but it's all piecemeal, isn't it? So like our local church has got, you can go there at a weekend and there's these old guys who fix stuff. And I love going there because I love my kids seeing, this is what real men, as opposed to your father who couldn't fix anything. This is what real men can do. They can fix this old stuff. Yeah. And, and everyone's taking great delight in all of that. But it's just a hobby. It's not the way an economy is operating. It's just it's
and
it
would be
piecemeal.
Substantially less damaging to the environment economy if we did. It'd be more like the 1950s. Than the 2020s in terms of the...
But it would slow progress, wouldn't it? It would slow everything down. But it would be a
good idea.
To slow progress.
Okay.
But you can't do that because capitalism is driving that progress.
And the trouble is capitalism works so long as you're in a cowboy world. And what we now realise is we left the cowboys behind.
Right. But we can't say we can't have capitalism because I'm sure there's anyone who's not a sympathiser to this podcast or to your writings will look and say, there they go again.
Yeah, I'm just
talking about knocking capitalism.
Capitalism can work if we take it off planet.
Right.
Okay. This is my long-term objective. Thought has always been that at some point, if humanity survives as a species, and the "if" is a big word, then production predominantly is going to occur off planet.
Then we don't care about the waste. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. You can dump it in outer space.
Because our inputs are greater and our outputs.
Fire it into the sun. Or fire it to whichever planet where it might be beneficial.
Right.
Okay. You use some carbon dioxide would be useful on Mars. That sort of thing can be done once we take capitalism off planet. But on the planet, for some time we've been facing this confrontation with the physical capability of the biosphere, which we've totally overloaded, and now it's fighting back. So the circular economy idea would be great if we did it in Earth, with Earth level production on Earth, where we reserved 80% of the planet for the other species. Which we haven't done.
So what is the circular economy trying to overcome then? Just the fact that if we're using up too many resources and they're limited, and B, is the waste side of it, is that a bit of a furphy though?
No, it's important because the waste side, I mean, for example, when you go shopping, you get a plastic bag. Yeah. Okay, disposable plastic bag. They're now biodegradable disposable plastic bags, but still disposable.
Right, but we've fixed that up, hopefully.
Sort of, not completely. It takes a while for them to dispose. And we've left a huge amount of gunk in the ocean as well.
But we're fixing it up with taxation and stuff like that.
It's too slow. I mean, what you talk about is a philosophy. Yeah, not just something which you encourage with various financial incentives, and the idea that people who are proposing a circular economy view and the donut economy view that Kate's put forward have got a different philosophy about how we should interact with the biosphere, and that in its own way is a criticism of capitalism, where you define capitalism as free market advocates do, as let anything rip, and the trouble is once we get off planet, then we can have your let it rip world. Right. And while we're still on the bounds of this planet, it has to take first priority.
Right, we're not going to be off planet for a little while. And how much of it is that, getting back to that, that problem I raised earlier, that so much of the cost of a good is the cost of the materials, and so many of the jobs involved are the jobs in extracting those materials. The actual manufacturing part of it is relatively small. So it's not economic for you to create something from reworking existing resources because the real money is coming from those resources.
And that's a real dilemma for the idea of a circular economy, because it implies we can be profitable while making everything reusable. And I think there's a conflict between the two.
Yeah. The only way I could see it working is if we go down that subscription road. So the idea that, for example, we make cars that only last for a certain period of time, but if you rented that car and then that got passed on from person to person, then you're going to make that car better, because all of a sudden it becomes your cost to maintain that car. So that this idea that you subscribe or you're renting stuff rather than buying stuff, that sounds like a great idea in theory because of that, because it makes people make stuff that lasts a lot longer, because they've got an ongoing revenue stream. So they want to minimize costs rather than increase sales. But we want to own stuff. That's the problem, isn't it? The idea of having a car is you want to buy, and the reason why you want to buy it for these big ticket items, I think, is because you think, I've paid for that now. I don't have to worry about it until, for 8 or 10 years.
Yeah, I remember once working in a magazine, Your Computer magazine, where the editor defined a personal computer in the following way. Said, a personal computer is a computer about which you can say it's mine or mine and you can't have it. Yeah. Okay. Now that's the world we live in. Yeah. And that's been encouraged to a large degree by our corporations, because that's a large part of where they make their profit. They don't need to worry about recycling it. They simply make things, it's your problem, the consumer's problem. Now, as you say, back when we were all, not all, but some of us had mechanical skills and knew how to fix stuff, which itself was fixable. Like, for example, way back in the 50 years ago, I never knew what the hell I was doing, but I helped Dad repair our carburetor in our car. That's feasible back in that world. With the drive towards making a product which you then dump on the consumer and say disposing of it is your problem, we end up with products that the consumer cannot even do that. I have no idea of what to do, and I'm sure my father would neither, with the fuel injection system.
Well, increasingly everything's just a closed box, isn't it? You open the hood of your car and it's just a box there. Yeah, you have no idea what's inside.
Yeah. So in that sense, there are some problems with the idea of a circular economy as well. If we do get to the stage where we can produce stuff in huge factories which are in outer space and drop them down in balloons. I mean, I'm talking 100 years in the future, and you're laughing as much as somebody would have laughed at the idea of me being in Australia 24 hours ago. Okay, which I was.
Yeah, you weren't dropped here by balloon, were you?
No, I came in an A380. But 100 years ago, that was as laughable a concept as me saying in 100 years' time we'll be off planet. So these things are feasible with our technological development. But So the circular economy, I think, was an idea which was well promoted. No, it wasn't. It was well promoted with trivial amounts of money. Didn't get through to the main thinking whatsoever. Had no impact upon how.
It's fringe thinking, as far as
it's
most
fringe
people
thinking.
can.
The trouble is the fringe is where the sanity exists. In this world of ours.
But this idea then of that we build stuff to last rather than stuff to sell, and people rent. Will that ever? I mean, is that the answer? Or is that, or as I said, is it going to not work because people want to own stuff? Like the idea that we have a car, for example, that I want to go somewhere and a car self-drives itself, and I don't own a car. I just basically order a car on my mobile phone. Sounds great, except for the fact you just think of how much stuff you've got at the back of your car that's been there for weeks. And, you'd have to take it out every time you wanted to get a car. We sort of like our car becomes ourselves, doesn't it? And I'm not sure that's ever going to work.
But I think whatever survives after the ecological crisis we're going through, with coronavirus being one of the two major warm-ups so far in 2020, it will be a world where we have a very philosophical approach to our attitude towards the environment.
Right, but are we going to link coronavirus to the environment and say... Do you think we will?
Global warming did not cause coronavirus, but correlation is not causation actually means there's a third factor which causes both the ones you're looking at.
Right.
In this case,
I don't think humankind is capable of making that jump. I think 99.9% of people will be saying the coronavirus was caused because of the strange eating habits of the Chinese.
Yeah. It's caused by the fact that humanity is by far the most abundant animal on the planet, and therefore the best possible place for pathogens to breed and evolve. And so if 20% of the planet was used by humans and 80% was other species, then you might well have viruses of massive contagion effect occurring in herds of wildebeest somewhere, because at least they'd have a host which would continue after the first round. Now, humans are the best place for a pathogen to develop.
So people who want to see a circular economy, whatever we're going to call it, a fix-it-based economy, what should they do? Or is it just pie in the sky dreams?
I think move from the fringe to the centre, because finally the reality is now coming down on the side of those who are always talking about needs to restrain our damage to the environment. Of course, the circular economy is part of that fringe. We've got to become the centre. And so
but how does it survive in the capitalist world? I mean, we've given lots of reasons why it's not working. What's really going to... I mean, one of those is the fact that just the cost of fixing something is a lot more.
Yeah, well, again, and that's where you can't have unregulated capitalism. Unregulated capitalism is a fantasy for the cowboy world, which is well and truly dead.
So this EU regulation to say, well, okay, we've actually got to start fixing stuff rather than just building it. However that regulation is going to be applied, that's a step in the right direction.
It's a step in the right direction. But what you have to say is any product must have a minimum length shelf life of something like, say, 50 years.
Even 10 years. If you said to everything it's got to have a 10-year, by a minimum of a 10-year guarantee.
Yeah, well, I mean,
that would change the way stuff's built.
I mean, it's one of those weird situations that if we technologically develop rapidly, then some of that stuff becomes obsolete in people's houses rather than obsolete on the shelves. So it's not an easy one to answer. I mean, for example, my mother has a washing machine which I think is about 40 years old. It still manages to work.
Yeah.
Okay. But then in terms of washing, we may at some stage develop sonic systems that don't use water at all.
Yeah, so it would be a bad thing that she's still using.
And that's the trouble. So it isn't an easy thing.
And even with mobile phones, even if you were told your mobile phone lasts for 50 years, you're still going to want the new one with the better camera in 2 years' time.
Yeah, so that means like the phones which have got replaceable components to them. But even the whole idea that a phone matters. I've just watched that quite hilarious American fantasy movie Jumanji, and at one stage
the original one or
the two later ones, which are better than the Robin Williams ones, substantially better, very funny. And in the first of the two sequels, one of the classes, I could brought my phone with me, and one of the other actors who comes from a period 20 years earlier says, "Phone must mean a different thing in your time."
Absolutely. Yeah, but now we're reliant on them. I'm not sure if they're good or bad for the economy. It's progress, so we have to say it's a good thing, unless you've got kids, in which case it's a frigging nightmare.
I managed to avoid that one.
Very smart. You're doing your bit to save the planet by not procreating.
There you go.
And mankind generally, actually. We're all grateful for that, Steve.
You're welcome.
Because there's only one Steve Keen on the planet. That's enough for everyone. Good to talk. We'll catch you again very soon.
Okay, Matt.
We have a few more Debunking Economics podcasts to listen to that we recorded before Steve flitted off to Asia, but we will also try and catch up with him over the internet as well. So more Debunking Economics podcasts. We continue each week. I'm Phil Dobbie. He's Steve Keen. Catch you again very soon. Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast, then please share it with your friends, like it on YouTube, and subscribe to this channel.